What's up, everyone? Online prep coach, Ask here with prepcoach.com. Today, talking about plasmalogens. This is a supplement that I think should be in literally everyone's protocol for reasons we're about to talk about. This is the kind of press, literature, and attention that fish oil, EPA, DHA traditional gets that plasmalogen should get. So let's break it down. It's a glycerol phospholipid. What makes it different and what allows it to do so many things that these traditional same compounds in its similar category can't do is because of its molecular structure. So we're going to break down first of all, and yes, I have gotten everyone's feedback. I'm going to try and write bigger on the board. I naturally write very small, so I'm trying to translate that better to what you guys can see on there. Because I write it up there, I think it's good, but then I watch the video, can't really see it, so I'm getting there. So let's try this out. So first of all, okay, I'm going to make this super big, so there's no way I can screw it up, right? Again, we're looking at the structure. If you understand the structure of something, then you can really figure out and pick apart what it has the potential to do. So what makes it different? First of all, we have this glycerol backbone, and we have some key positions. And I should change the color for these key positions. There's an SN1 position, SN2 position, and SN3 position. Now, obviously, we're going to fill in some other bits and bobs. From here, what makes this specific classification of molecules so different is what's attached to that SN1, 2, and 3 position. So what we end up seeing is over here, this vinyl ether linker, which is actually right here. That vinyl ether position makes it unique, right? Let me finish filling this in, because there's also a saturated fatty acid there. Down here, we have an actual polyunsaturated fatty acid. That at that SN2 position makes it unique. Then over here at this SN3 position, is right here. What we have over here is a choline and an ethylamine. So structurally, what allows these plasmalogens to do all the cool things that we're about to talk about is because of the difference at that SN1 position being that vinyl ether linker, the change at that SN2 position being that polyunsaturated fatty acid, and then the change at that SN3 position being that choline and ethylamine. So structurally, okay, that's why plasmalogens can do everything we're about to talk about. The list is extensive. That's why I wanted to do the actual structure first. Because when we look at how the heart operates, how neurological tissue operates, how your liver, kidney, organs, split, does not matter. Everything's essentially operating with some degree of plasmalogen interaction. That's why this is such a broad, massive classification, and this should kind of be one of the multivitamins that everyone should be taking in. So we'll go down the list. One of the big things, right? We were looking at its ability to downregulate arterial inflammation. So arterial inflammation-wise, by the way, I think that looks pretty big. I think my writing size is getting a little better. Maybe, I'll see. Give me the feedback. Arterial inflammation, right? We have this world and this agenda today, which is crush you with statins, crush your cholesterol, total cholesterol, so we can handle the downstream apolipo levels. The problem with that scenario is all cells, all cell membranes are made up of cholesterol. So if you have low cholesterol levels, right, we have this cell membrane that gets weak. It gets weak, and that's how it gets damaged. It gets oxidized. So this cell membrane will get oxidized. Once it gets oxidized, it will then pick up, it be stored, and get stuck in those vascular layers. What does that mean? We start storing, after we oxidize, say, LDL particles, they start storing, they start accumulating, and they start causing what? Atherosclerosis. So by having too low of total cholesterol levels and having too high of inflammation, we are oxidizing LDL and storing it and causing plaque to actually accumulate. So the whole atherosclerosis, calcium scores, things like that if you take away the, first of all, overall inflammatory oxidative response, cool. Number two, actually increase your cholesterol levels. What that does, if we have total cholesterols of like 200 plus, HDLs of 50 plus, LDLs of like 100 plus, is that cell membrane now, we're gonna fortify it, right? That cell membrane is now fortified because total cholesterol levels are improved. That means that this oxidation is not going to occur. By the way, after the last seminar video, I switched to a towel because I used that eraser and I had to scrub this board clean because it got like that sticky stuff on it. I don't know what that kind of glue that was. But either way, that membrane's now stronger. Oxidation does not occur and therefore plaque does not occur. So plasmalogens not only have the potential to improve your cholesterol panel, that directly improves your integrity of your cell membranes, which is another big function of it. And then directly decreases arterial inflammation. So, what did we just say? Improves cell membranes. And if you read the research and the literature, we're looking at it from an integrity standpoint, functionality standpoint, kind of every aspect of how a cell membrane has to function globally in our body gets improved, and then we're reducing arterial inflammation. So if I had to kind of say one in the top 5 compounds to lower calcium scores, to lower plaque accumulation, plasmalogens. Traditional fish oil doesn't do it to the same extent. So that's kind of 1, 2 big things. What else? We see its ability to remyelinate neurons. And we'll kind of clump these together, decrease amyloid plaque accumulation. So we're lumping these together because let's look at the TBI world, right? All my NFL athletes, all my NHL athletes, all whoever I work with that's a professional athlete or any kind of athlete, doesn't even have to be professional, if they have a potential to have a traumatic brain injury, have a concussion, the first thing that happens, actually it's brain first, then gut, but first we have that neuron that demyelinates and then starts sending the wrong electrical signals. That's kind of like one of the first steps that happens when you get a TBI. So what happens if you're taking plasmalogen supplementation while you undergo a traumatic brain injury event, concussion, whatever you want to call it, it starts remyelinating those neurons the second it happens, the picosecond it happens. So while you're taking plasmalogens, it makes you essentially bulletproof to having a TBI, which is pretty crazy with an over-the-counter supplement. Then the amyloid beta plaques. Remember, we talked about this many times in the past. Let's make sure we're on the same page. Amyloid beta plaque in the brain was originally what everyone said, oh, that causes all these neurological dysfunctions. In reality, it's the same fat in our brain that's around our waistband. It is essentially what is holding onto these toxins and not allowing them to be released. So the amyloid plaque, these plaques in the brain are actually protective mechanisms to make sure that it's not being released and causing neurological trauma and damage. So it's not that the plaque is bad, but the plaque is a byproduct because there's a lot of crud floating around in our brains that needs to be actually detoxified, moved out of our system, and not kind of released in the brain. So right out of the gate, that's a big one. To decrease the plaque accumulation and to remyelinate neurons, which means we're starting to clear the brain of all of these different inflammatory processes that occur. Another one, we were looking at a decrease in overall inflammation levels, kind of going right into that because of what we just said about the brain. Not just neural inflammation. We're talking about cell-to-cell global inflammation that occurs from oxidative stress, too much hydrogen peroxide ions, whatever's generating it. This can act as one of the best anti-inflammatory aids out there. What did we talk about beforehand? Plasmalogens are found literally everywhere, in our brain, in our heart, in our kidneys, in our liver. They're found in every single cell. So if we can improve the inflammatory cascade in those cells, we can start to actually fortify these cellular structures and all of a sudden not run into actual issues from an inflammatory aspect. Now we're going to look at tumors. Tumors are a big one. What we can see is an actual decrease in so looking at tumors. First of all, what happens in cancers, tumors, all that kind of stuff, you'll have this cluster of senescent cancerous cells that'll slowly proliferate. They'll get bigger and bigger. At a certain point, they'll start to metastasize. Metastasize just means move. So what plasmalogens will do is, first of all, blunt the growth of these tumors, then stop them from being actually able to move. So you're blunting the growth in the first place, then stopping it from going to a different organ system or area that we don't want. So right out of the gate, cool. What else? There's actually some mitogenic properties at the same time. So we can see rebuilding of multiple cellular structures. Again, if you had cardiac damage, look back at the preconditioning effect, right? That was whenever you would have an insult to your heart, let's say have a mini heart attack, your heart doesn't stay weak. As long as you change your lifestyle and make all those combination changes you're supposed to make, but it doesn't stay weak. It actually improves and gets better. It's that pre-programming, preconditioned effect you can find in the literature, and it happens in reality. In all of biology, we're meant to be resilient. So what can happen with plasmalogen supplementation, while it's pulling down inflammation, while it's stopping tumors from growing and stopping tumors from moving, it's also potentiating the positive cell proliferation of positive cells, organs, and tissue types. So what we see potentially, because there's a PI3K, obviously interaction there, that'll drive that mitogenic cascade. Potentially some potential for muscular hypertrophy, but that's not why we're taking these. Mainly we're looking at it from an organ system standpoint. So we're able to slowly regrow, improve the functionality of these organ systems. Again, pretty much globally, because plasmalogens are found everywhere. Remember, in breast milk, the reason why breast milk is so healthy for us. Good amount of plasmalogens, good amount of fatty 15, good amount of colostrum, all these things that as we age, because there's a biosynthetic process that we can actually produce and make our own plasmalogens, right? You can get plasmalogens from food, from chicken, from beef, from mussels, from scallops, things like that. The problem is those plasmalogens get basically destroyed in our gut. Besides plasmalogens from breast milk, which is a completely different animal, we're not getting that into our system in a usable format. They're getting destroyed in the gut. So as we age, that biosynthetic cascade, because we're also not getting any more in, it starts to go down. And the numbers start to show there's a huge correlation between every neurological dysfunction and plasmalogen deficiency. So as we age, this whole synthetic process goes down. Because we can't get enough out of our food, we have to supplement with it. So this is where, again, the plasmalogen conversation really comes in. So we have all these changes, right? There's a lot in every organ system. I don't want to belabor on that too much, but plasmalogens have a place in every system. One more, actually, we're going to cover it, and then we're going to go into some other things, the products, protocols, and things like that. Because you guys know I like to make sure there's a high amount of application with this. Education's cool, but you got to know how to apply this stuff, right? So a big one is actually, like always, apparently, we're talking about mitochondria, mainly cardiolipin. So cardiolipin is in that inner mitochondrial membrane layer. Remember, we drew that actual mitochondria before. I'll put it right here. And we had mitochondria, that outer layer. We have inner layer with the cristae and all that kind of fun stuff. Basically, cardiolipin is right in that inner layer. And what it's doing is it's actually stabilizing the mitochondria and improving its functionality. So everything you're doing to improve your mitochondria, getting your light exposure, maybe doing some fasting, maybe doing your weight training, maybe how you're eating, the red near-infrared light exposure, your peptides, everything can essentially be blunted by what's going on at cardiolipin level. So we're trying to stabilize cardiolipin to make our mitochondria function better, and that's where plasmalogens are really coming in. So we have a lot going on, okay? We are going to look at these specific products because we could start talking about more organ-based systems, but it gets a little bit repetitive, and it's kind of tough whenever you have a product like this that does so many things in so many places. It's kind of like if you talked about glutathione, right? You could talk about glutathione in every single system and how beneficial it is for you. And at some point, it just gets a little bit laborious. It gets a little bit like, okay, we get it, it's important. But what are we going to do about it? So again, for this video specifically, we're only looking at the prodrome, okay? So the prodrome product of plasmalogens. I actually don't even know if anyone else makes plasmalogens. They probably do. This is the only brand that I actually trust. Dr. Good now has done all the research on it. He might even, I'm not actually sure. I've never looked after I found his product, read the research. So we're good to go with prodrome, right? Couple different varieties. So first of all, we're going to have a neuro and a glia, and then we're going to talk about the enhanced. So switch colors for this. In the neuro, we're looking at a couple different things. So let's break these apart and see what the biggest difference is, right? First of all, the parts of the brain that they're acting upon mainly, neuro is mainly acting on that gray matter, whereas glia is working on more of the white matter. Working in every system in the body, every organ system, but neurologically, look at that as being a pretty big difference. So neuro is going to be that actual omega-3 DHA, whereas glia is going to be omega-9 oleic. Now, if we're trying to break this down as easy as possible, looking at where they're working at in the brain, looking at what we can take of it from a neurological benefit standpoint, because again, both of these products, the neuro and the glial, any plasmalogen of this variety is going to drive the changes in cardiac, renal, hepatic, every system. We're trying to see what makes them different. Because in reality, the neuro can give some people acid reflux. They can. Not the majority, but the minority. If that's the case, I don't like people taking products that then cause them to have acidic problems. If everything else is fixed in the equation and that's the only thing causing it, I would rather them not take a TUM or take something else like that. I'd rather them drop the neuro and just stack up on glia. Time and a place for everything, but that can happen. If you need more of the overall processing, repair, things like that, we're going to have differences, right? So neuro-wise, that's going to be the increase in processing speed, whereas the glia is going to be the overall repair-based player. This is also going to be the thing that will fortify the blood-brain barrier. That's also the thing that's dealing more with those glial-based cells. So if you can understand the differences here, because they're both doing everything from an organ healing aspect, mainly looking at brain differences. What we see in the brain, the differences there, is processing speed, improving the functionality of your day, or repairing from the damage of that TBI, or how stressful your day was, or whatever it is. So we have that differentiating effect, right? But again, we're going to say both are going to drive up global healing. I think that's really important to understand because although there are a lot of other subtle differences, getting lab work over the years with people utilizing plasmalogens, we've gone through the process. I've done it myself of taking just the neuro, getting the blood work, just the glial, getting the work, and then taking both. Both of them will equate to more total plasmalogen levels. So obviously we're going to have more overall global healing. But if you just want to take it for the global healing benefits and maybe you can't afford both of these, the glial is cheaper, you can take the glial. You won't be getting the full efficacy or benefit. You can even higher dose that to kind of get close to getting the global healing effects, but you're never going to be able to match what the neuro is because it's a different structure, it's a different molecule, so therefore it has different end fates. So best case scenario, we're looking at taking only glia if we can't afford both. Best case scenario, we're taking both, okay? So we can kind of graduate from there. Then what else we have is we have the actual phosphatidylcholine preparation, okay? So phosphatidylcholine-wise, this is specifically from egg yolk. So egg yolk has, and I'll actually write this down first of all, because phosphatidylcholine, take a step back, this is going to have a high amount of acetylcholine generation, right? So phosphatidylcholine getting your neurons to release more acetylcholine and dump it into the system. Remember, brain runs glucose, ketones, acetylcholine, a bunch of different things. We're going to help donate more acetylcholine to the entire choline synthetic process and really drive those neurons to release more acetylcholine. So a pretty cool thing there, number one, the acetylcholine aspect. We're then going to have further downregulations in arterial inflammation. We're going to have improvements in cardiac integrity, so strength and everything of that nature. We're going to see phosphatidylcholine doing a lot of awesome things. If we look at that, again, going back to kind of being an overall organ-based healer, not the same extent as our plasmalogens, but complementing what these plasmalogens do. There's the products of the neuro and the glial with the actual phosphatidylcholine, comes with ubiquinone, comes with some fat-soluble vitamins. Awesome product. That combination with the phosphatidylcholine is kind of the best of the best. Now, the difference in terms of from my practical experience and the people I've worked with over the years, again, whatever, couple thousand, X number at this point, it's all based on finances. Going back to this not being a cheap product, if you only have the bare minimum, just get glial. If you can afford a little bit more, get glial and neuro. If you can afford a little bit more, get glial plus the actual phosphatidylcholine or neuro plus phosphatidylcholine or both. Best case scenario, we're getting the combination of both with phosphatidylcholine. The differences might only be about 5 to 10%, but that's over a long period of time. These are products and supplements that should be taken long term. So in my kind of rational mind, I go, oh, okay, if I get 5 or 10% every single day, that's going to add up massively long term. But it still comes down to budget. I don't feel like most people can afford that combination. And so I usually don't recommend that most people have the actual phosphatidylcholine preparations just because of the amount. And dosage-wise, by the way, we're looking at 2 caps for the neuro being 900 milligrams. Same thing with the glial, 2 caps being 900 milligrams. And then the PC is actually a liquid, which does not taste good, but that is going to be 2 grams. So you could also just take the phosphatidylcholine preparations and take less. You can do this a bunch of different ways. The most important thing is to understand the differences between the neuro and the glial, the differences between phosphatidylcholine addition, which again is coming from egg yolk, which, and this is super cool, this phosphatidylcholine is coming from egg yolk, which is like the same composition of our brain, which is pretty cool, right? So we were looking at it being, so again, this is coming from actual egg yolk. And that means it is higher in omega-9s, lower in omega-6s. Remember, omega-9s are going to be anti-inflammatory. Omega-6s are going to be more pro-inflammatory. So we have a better source with lower inflammation rates that's also then going to drive up acetylcholine production, pull down inflammation globally, start having, because there's even more interactions with phosphatidylcholine in the global system with mitochondria and everything as a whole. But again, I don't want to belabor on that too much. As a whole, if you're trying to drive up longevity, full body recovery, not get a TBI, function better every single day neurologically, plasmalogens have their place and purpose. So we understand the basics, right? We get how they're actually working. Another thing that it can do as well that we didn't talk about is it will actually blunt the whole ferroptosis process. So one of the biggest reasons why we take our fatty 15s is to blunt that. So again, that's another way we can drive cell death through a lot of different iron-based cascades and hemoglobin, hematology-based cascades. So we're on the same page, right? We know the structure. We know that plasmalogens are found basically everywhere. We know that they do basically everything for health. And we know the difference between the product, the neuro, the glial, and then the phosphatidylcholine-based preparations. So now we take a step further and let's look at the actual protocols. Protocols on how to implement them. Again, we're going to break apart this just like we talked about, but make sure that there are differences because there are some pretty big differences. First of all, we're going to say general population. Someone who just wants to drive longevity, right? For the longevity community, someone who is relatively healthy, okay, we are looking at implementing ideally, again, we're going to do neuro in the AM, glia in the PM, one to 2 caps. What you can do, what's recommended through the website, is to have a higher amount of capsules initially to replete plasmalogen levels, and then you can drop down to lower dosages. For the vast majority of people, I prefer to do it longer, lower, slower over time versus having that bolus dose, because I look at more than just what's happening with plasmalogen levels. We're not trying to just get plasmalogen levels up. We're not trying to just replete those levels. We are, but we're also trying to increase the surrounding architecture of our neurons. We're trying to improve everything beyond just the plasmalogen levels in our brain, in our heart, in our kidneys. We're trying to do this in combination with more neurological work, maybe with more sun exposure. We're trying to bring up the system as a whole. So I would rather someone low dose them morning, night, because remember, processing versus repair, and they do other things too, but we kind of look at it that way. And then just stay at that dose long term, okay? This is a product that, again, pregnant women can be taking. Pregnancy can fit into this category as well because breast milk. So we talked about how important it is for fetal development, brain, spinal cord, organogenesis, so the production of these organs, it's very plasmalogen dependent. So I think on the research, literature-wise, they tend to say 3rd trimester, bring in your plasmalogens. I prefer to have it in the entire time and postpartum, because remember, we're trying to fortify that breast milk so our little baby can continue developing. They're developing at alarming rates. So we would like to have all the raw constituents there in place. This is one of the reasons why like breast milk and breastfeeding is better than traditional formulas, because formulas don't have plasmalogens in it, or fatty 15 because they get too expensive, and I don't think most people know about it anyway. So either way, there's that. So that's general dosage. Then we talk about children, okay? If we have children with ADHD, ADD, any kind of neurological, we'll say deficiency. That's not the right way to word it, because ADHD, ADD, it's not even a deficiency, just a different type of neurochemical environment. If you have a child who has a different type of neurochemical environment, you can help to improve the entire neurochemical process. So this will also affect dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine. I've had a lot of children that were clinically diagnosed as ADHD and given traditional ADHD medications. We brought in plasmalogens and we worked them out completely. So there's an interaction in all neurochemicals. That also means not just children, but everyone out there, if you're taking a nootropic, this is going to change how they work, because it's changing your neurochemistry and essentially balancing and modulating things out based on what your neurochemistry needs. So children also fit into this category, okay? Now, let's say you have the money to spend. That's whenever you go with the phosphatidylcholine preparations. That's going to be, again, you can dose it lower, but ideally we do something like 2.5 to 5 ml per. And that is a traditional serving size. Again, depending on finances. If you have acid reflux, it's only ever going to come from the neuro. I don't think I've ever seen anyone have the glial preparation that caused acid reflux. The phosphatidylcholine preparation are in oils. You can buy the pill forms of the neuro and the glial. So ideally, pills, I don't like the taste of the liquids, but kind of is what it is. It's worth the benefits. So we have that, right? Basic longevity. Now we're going to look at, we're going to say high-performing entrepreneurs, CEOs, or just high performers in general, right? This is where we can do and play with a lot of different things. So for myself and for a lot of people that are, I would consider high performers, doing a lot in their day, they have a family, they have multiple businesses, they're training, they're trying to do it all, be superhuman. We're looking at 4 caps of neuro in the morning and 4 caps of glio at night. Now, you can take more. I recently did an experiment where I went up to 10 capsules of each. And what happens at 10 capsules, so if you've ever pushed brain-derived neurotrophic factor hard, it can actually accumulate in follicles and cause your hair to die off and fall out. If you drive neurogenesis hard, that happens. If you drive neurogenesis hard, which is, again, literally creating new parts of your brain, new neurons, new synapses, new connections, all that fun stuff, increasing communication, increasing signaling strength, all that fun stuff, you can also get a lot of brain fog because it's very laborious. Your brain requires so much oxygen, so much substrate and nutrients to just thrive normally. Imagine if you're hypertrophying it. Imagine if you're getting better at it. So I high dosed it for 10 days of both, 10 caps each, and I had extreme amounts of brain fog, and my hair fell out very fast. So it's worth it to me because after I came off, the brain fog obviously alleviated. The hair has a 30, 60, 90-day cycle, so that takes a little bit to come back. But I did it for a purpose and a reason. And immediately, my ability to recall memories, my ability to improve my speech, my ability to do everything neurologically and speech and just performance throughout the day improved a good 10%. So to me, this is something at a full 10% improvement after only 10 days, not something you can do long-term, because I do not think that's going to track linearly. But I think higher dosing that for the high-performing individuals like myself, we could do that once or twice, maybe 3 times a year, maybe once a quarter. So between 1 to 4 times per year, I think you can push neurogenesis that hard and get these consistent 5 to 10% bumps in overall neurochemical and neurological performance. I like that. That's worth it for me. So after I did that experiment, now, as of right now, when I'm recording this video, I'm still picking up my own literature, my own application rather, for my own phosphatidylcholine preparations. I have loved the traditional pills. I'm going through the process now of doing the same kind of experiment with the actual phosphatidylcholine preparations. So I'll make another video, or I'll make a post or something about that. But the traditional neuro and glial are that incredible. So I'm expecting even more so out of the actual phosphatidylcholine. I originally did not take the phosphatidylcholine because I was getting it from multiple other sources, and it was something that I just honestly didn't need at the time. But because of doing that 10 cap experiment and seeing the effects, I'm kind of changing my tune. I'm kind of thinking maybe I should try the phosphatidylcholine preparation. So I'm going to try that. I'll let you guys know. But that's kind of what we have roughly for the high performers. And again, this can be dosed a whole bunch of different ways. Now we're going to have our athletes. In the athletic world, we're going to have, I prefer, because again, we're talking about people that have a potential to get a TBI. This could be your children, your child, your son playing high school football. This could be your daughter playing grade school lacrosse. I don't know. Doesn't matter. Any potential for a TBI, your children can have them in. So the dose can range from 1 to 2 caps to multiple high caps. What I prefer to do for most of my athletes is we're going to have baseline. So neuro AM, 4 caps, glial PM, 4 caps. And then from there, and by the way, or we're doing 5 mil of each at their given time. And then we're also putting it in before specific events, before games. So before games, I prefer a combination therapy. So again, backtrack a little bit. Athletes are either taking 4 caps or they're doing the 5 mil, depending on finances. Again, if it's a high school athlete, I'd probably want to go with saving them some money, make sure they can save up and build up a savings for the future and go with the capsules. If it's an NFL player, if it's a high tier, really, big MMA fighter, something like that, all the money in the world, we're definitely going with 5 or maybe even 10 milliliters of the phosphacholine preparation, depending on, again, finances and what they want to actually do. But after that, we are then having a pre-game ingestion, usually of about 1 to 2 servings of both. I'm doing this specifically because during a fight, during Super Bowl Sunday, during whatever your sport is, when you're in the moment, you need a high amount of volition, neurological action, and processing. That comes from the neuro. At the same time, though, if you are getting hit in the head, even little micro traumas are causing the repair process to happen, why not fortify that process as it happens? And so then therefore, we would bring in the glial as well to drive up the repair. So in this scenario, we are anticipating a TBI. What we'll normally do with this as well, because in this, by the way, we're using actual caps. I don't like having the oil on hand because it can give some people an upset stomach or it's just annoying. They drip it everywhere. Ideally, we'd use the capsules. It's just easier transportation. And then, again, we could have 1 to 2 servings, which would be about 2 to 4 caps, something like that. And then we're also doing something, depending on the sport, like a Q collar. Q collar is a little bit of pressure on the carotid artery. It will push more blood flow into the brain. And what happens is you have your skull, right? Skull, brain. It's going to put that barrier of blood, so it acts like a cushion. So as your brain hits against your skull in a TBI, it's cushioned by the blood, while automatically driving immediate remyelination of neurons from the plasmalogens. So overall, from the longevity world to children, to high performers, to athletes, you can dose this a bunch of different ways. Again, depending on finances, start off with the actual capsules. If you can afford more and need more and want to take more, then kind of graduate up to the phosphacholine preparations. We are looking at plasmalogens, again, as to me being one of the best over-the-counter supplements out there. I think that this should take the cake and replace fish oil supplementation. There is more than enough literature out there, more than enough anecdotal evidence and experience. And I feel like if we're really trying to overcome this whole world of terrible plaque scores, high calcium scores, right? All these cancers, we are having all these athletes just getting so many TBIs. All of this is potentially fixable. And I don't want plasmalogens to seem like the cure-all, the wonder molecule, but they kind of are. They do so many amazing things. And just personally for me, again, going back to the fact that I was never an intelligent person naturally, I never focused, I never had good memory naturally. I've done so many other things. It's not that plasmalogens did everything for me, but there was a definite change once I introduced them into my life. So dramatically so that, again, my wife is taking them now while she's pregnant. So that baby 4, because we don't know the gender yet, baby 4 is going to be thriving before baby 4 even comes out, boy or girl, whatever. And then Lila, she's kind of like me, doesn't have that great of a memory, doesn't really focus that well, And so me starting her on this now, she's now a couple months into taking 1 cap of each. So 1 in the neuro in the AM, 1 of glio in the PM. She has improved her focus, her speech, her memory, everything. She's learning better. She's having more fun learning. It's a better experience. Recently, literally this morning, today I'm recording this, we had to pull out the neuro because it was giving her a little bit of acid reflux. So I'm going to make up the difference, give her 2 glio at night. And then hopefully long-term we can work that back and she won't have acid. But we have a history of familial acid reflux and GERD. So I reversed that for myself, reversed it for both of my boys, and it looks like I did that for Lila too. So we'll do that, bring the neuro back in, and then she'll be thriving. But on a personal level, I just feel like Plasmalogens did so much for me and for my life that I am bringing them in for my children for the rest of their lives, for my wife and for myself for the rest of my lives, our lives. So I feel like it at least warrants at least a little bit of research on your end. I would personally rather drop out about 5 other supplements and replace them with Plasmalogens, because if you're looking at kind of the one-stop shop for neurochemistry and overall health, then you can't really get a better supplement than this. And it gets over the counter. So this is a pretty brief overview of Plasmalogens, but I wanted to keep this a little bit more shorter and more specific. I didn't want to belabor on too much about every organ system and the interactions it has, because it does. It gets a little bit repetitive. But Plasmalogens are found in pretty much every part of our body. We need them as we're a child developing. Again, if a breast is actually producing Plasmalogens and Plasmalogen content is found high in breast milk, kind of makes you think. If we see that Plasmalogen levels are declining as we get older, and they're associated with so many different neurological and organ-based failures and dysfunctions, it makes you kind of start to think, okay, maybe there's something there. So big fan of Plasmalogens. Again, try it, don't try it, all up to you. At least now you have the information and knowledge to go out and do your own research. And I say this all the time, but I truly mean it. Don't just take my word for it. Go out there and do your own research and see if you even need this. Although I think it should be in everyone's protocol, it doesn't have to be. If you have that elderly individual in your family, then it might be something that's worth looking into for them, especially in that environment. That's one thing we actually did not talk about, right? We talked about longevity, we talked about performance, we talked about athletes. We didn't actually talk about dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, we'll say any kind of neurological deficiency, which can be a lot in there, but we're going to limit it to those 3, okay? So in this kind of world, erase all this. This is where you tend to need other players in there as well, but the sooner you can start your mother, your father, your grandmother, grandfather, whoever is having this kind of neurological deficiency or issue or accumulational problem, the sooner you can start, the better you can fortify against and prevent these problems from happening in the first place. We don't want to be reactive for health. We want to be preventative. We want to be proactive. So in this kind of, we're going to say sick, dysfunctional population, again, and we're going to add a couple other things onto here. Neuro, glia, ideally 4 caps of each AM, PM. But in this world, okay, we also have other things going on. So what could we pair with our Plasmalogens? Because we could do this with the other categories too, with our longevity, with our general population, with our athletes, with our high performers. But I think that this video might warrant a little more focus on this functional. This can also apply over to the vascular, inflammatory, and calcium score-based world. But again, for the sake of this conversation right here, we're focusing on Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, things like that. So what else could pair very well here? What do we normally see in terms of the neural atrophy-based world? Well, first of all, there needs to be actions done behind this. There should be the basic grounding outside. There should be the basic sun exposure. There should be the basic neuroplastic games. There should be writing in cursive. There should be reading every day. There should be learning a different language. All the basic things we've talked about. And look back at my Limitless Energy. I believe that was the first seminar I did on here. And I talked about all these basic things to improve neuroplasticity. Do those things. Make sure you're actually limiting synaptic pruning. Synaptic pruning is the process of our brain doesn't want to grow, doesn't want to do new things. So it'll start snipping things off basically at the end of every day, unless if we do something to drive up more glial cell line derived neurotrophic factor, which is going to come from doing a new skill. Could be juggling, could be rapping, could be writing with your left hand, could be whatever. It just has to be different and novel. You don't have to do it every day, but a couple days per week, rotating things every couple weeks after that can blunt that synaptic pruning process and allow your brain to continue to keep changing, right? So again, going back to this, we do all that, we do all the basics. Now we're looking at some other players. A big one, honestly, I'm going to put this is wrong. That should have been PM. Remember, neuro AM, glial PM, for the most part, if you do have a TBI, you would actually also want to put glial in the AM. There's a couple different nuances there, but you would also still benefit from the repair process in the PM, so a little bit of semantics there. But saffron is an awesome player to bring in here, right? So we want a product with a high amount of crocin content and a lower amount of safranol. This is the compound that it's actually super cool. It can, they say it'll essentially build up like a blue light blocking lens in your eyes. It'll basically blunt the effects and the damage the blue light has on your ocular tissue, which is super cool. But for us, it's also further ameliorating the amyloid beta plaque and amyloid plaque overall accumulation in the brain. So first of all, that's a pretty big thing. Pulling down these plaque levels, I think that's pretty big. Now we have some other players we need to talk about. And we're going to go to the AM. Because remember, the whole process is trying to fix our brain. There's usually a lot of glutamate toxicity-based problems. So usually in an infrequent fashion or low dose daily, we can actually bring in something like a Neopept. So in this sick-based scenario, again, we're not just looking at athletes. We're not trying to use Neopept to drive motor learning. We're trying to ameliorate glutamate toxicity. That means 5 to 10 milligrams could be in there every single day. If you're taking Neopept for the learning benefits, the motor changes, things like that to the motor cortex, that's going to be infrequent. But if it's a health-based reason, that's going to be daily. What else are we going to put in there? More than likely, we want to have our basics covered, right? So we want to have our basic DHA and pregnenolone. So DHA-wise, that's the thing that's going to drive up a lot of neurosteroid production. Pregnenolone-wise, I prefer a micronized pregnenolone below 10 milligrams. Once you go above 10 milligrams of pregnenolone, it spills over more of the sex hormone production cascade. This one, under 10 milligrams, is going to drive sigma-1 receptor-based changes and drive up more neuroplasticity in the brain. What also is going to happen is as we're doing all these things in the brain, we're going to run into a fueling problem. So usually we need something, some kind of choline or ketone variety, or both. So I'm actually going to do both. Let's just say that this is a terrible scenario, and I'm realizing that I'm writing too small, so I'll start writing bigger. So in this scenario, KE4 ketones, ketone IQ are two really good compounds. I prefer the KE4 variety for a lot of the health-based reasons. We're doing this to pull down a lot of inflammatory cascades, to drive it as an intracellular signaling agent, and to fuel the brain with more ketone bodies, number one, because that's the monoester, straight in the blood, straight action. Then we're going to want something like an acetyl L-carnitine. That's going to donate methyl groups to the acetylcholine synthetic process, which is then going to improve the phosphatidylcholine if you're taking the phosphatidylcholine preparation of prodrome, plasmalogen, neuroglial. So let's say we're capped out there, right? We have the fueling covered, we have sigma-1 receptor changes, we have basic neurosteroid production, we have glutamate toxicity covered, okay? Now let's go to the PM. We have the saffron. That's the big amyloid beta plaque player. What are some other ones in? We're going to assume, and actually I should probably write that on the board, right? Because we can't assume. We should have our basics D and K before bed. We should have our magnesium. Specifically for magnesium, ideally we want to look at an L-threonate. That's going to be more of those MDA receptors, more of the neurochemical changes. If we just need to replete basic magnesium levels of bisglycinates, more than fine. You could do both, but for this neurological deficiency-based world, we're looking mainly at the L-threonate, okay? So we have all these in play. A big one is going to be something of the growth hormone variety. So exogenous growth hormone will drive up oligodendrogenesis in the brain. It's going to actually drive up and improve the whole lymphatic system. So in this dysfunctional world, the lymphatic system is what happens at night, which bathes our brain in blood, cerebrospinal fluid, drives up a lot of neural recovery and clears all those plaques. So that really can't happen if this process of oligodendrogenesis in the lymphatic system stimulation isn't happening. This is where some other things during the day, maybe we can bring in like a pyroquinolone quinione, so PQQ. Maybe we also bring in something like a nicotinamide mononucleotide. A lot of different things to also help cross-stimulate that process, but some kind of a growth hormone-based product. Does not have to be exogenous growth hormone. Could be ipamorelin, could be a CJ, could be a different kind of growth hormone-releasing peptide. Nothing's going to work as well as exogenous growth hormone for this specific reason, but anything on that growth hormone stimulus axis is going to help. So you could add to this list J147. You could add to this list dihexa. You could add cerebrolysine, even though that's kind of going through its own little battle right now. You could add so many things, but as a basic protocol for your sick or dysfunctional parent or grandparent, work backwards from here. They probably are not going to want to take IVs or intramuscular or sub-Q applications. So maybe you start off with basic plasmalogens, then you graduate. Maybe a little bit of saffron, maybe the basics. Then you go to your Neopept and DHA and slowly ease these things in. Most people in that generation, so I'm 32, so people in my parents' generation and grandparents, they are usually hesitant to do things that are outside of the medical system, which is more than fine. Different generations, different worlds. I would have them bring up this information with their doctor. And also you can prepare the literature for yourself and start giving them, literally handing them the information and say, hey, I can fix you, at least stop the progression, if not completely reverse it. So depending on the progression and how far, the dementia actually is, might be hard to come back from, but I've seen it so many times before, and I truly believe it because I've done it so many times. And other people, I'm not the only person. There's a lot of great coaches out there that are doing this every day. But we've seen the worst cases come back. So if you have a parent or a grandparent who is suffering, you can bring them back. You truly can help them. You just need to have the knowledge and the application to know how to do it. So, gonna stop belaboring on. That's a little breakdown on plasmalogens. Main look at the prodrome, neuroglial, and the phosphacholine preparations. We talked about the structure. We talked about essentially what they do in the body and every organ system. We talked about basic protocols and pretty much why I said in the beginning how this could be applied for absolutely everyone out there. It's more dependent upon your budget based on how much you take and which ones you take. But no matter what, as long as anyone, because the cheapest one out there is the glial capsules. If someone even takes one of those per day for the rest of their lives, you'll be better off than taking none of them. And then graduate and do one of the neuro. Like literally, some is better than none. I would rather drop out multiple other supplements and keep these in play if it was a budgetary problem, because they're just that beneficial. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Check out thepepcoach.com. See you guys next time.